Hello and welcome to the world of Pokemon. Are you a boy or a girl? Don't answer that. I couldn't care less as long as you watch my videos. My name is Jack the Sunoff and welcome to a brand spanking new challenge run. This run was requested by my wonderful girlfriend, so if you have any complaints, direct them at her. Or direct them at me who can direct them at her. I'll be directing them into the complaint bin. So without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting like 20 seconds for, can I beat Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky with only 5 items in my inventory? You may be wondering what this even means in the first place. I'll explain as things become relevant, but just know that this is going to be a very hard challenge. Before I can even dungeon any mysteries, I have to take a quiz. Alright, this is what high school prepared me for. I'll let the quiz play out as I read off the rules. Rule 1. I can only have 5 items maximum in my inventory while playing the game. Sounds pretty easy to understand, right? Rule 2. If I pick up extra items in dungeons, I have to immediately drop everything until I'm back to 5 items. This means throwing, placing, dropping. I just can't use the items. Not until I get below 5 items again, then I'm good to grab whatever I want. And that's it for the rules. It's all a pretty simple idea really, so let's get into the run. Oh, you may have noticed I haven't done a montage yet. That's because I won't be doing one at all. This is going to be a very basic video at my girlfriend's request. She's the chief here. It seems that I've come across a particularly monkey looking fella as my new Pokesona. Chimchar is the best starter of all time, and I will not be hearing any other opinions on the matter, especially if you say Snivy is the best starter. You're just insane. Then as my future partner and best friend in rescue, I choose Piplup. Yes, that means Piplup is the second best starter of all time, and I will once again refuse to hear all other opinions. And so begins chapter 1. You see, Piplup is a purveyor of beautiful sights. He comes down to the beach to check out the crabbies blowing bubbles under the setting sun. It just so happens that on this particular visit to the beach, he finds a dimensional hitchhiker. That is me, Jack, the Chimchar. My special qualities are sleeping in the sand and having severe amnesia. Before we can do any sort of official exploration teaming, Piplup and I must dive into the deepest parts of the beach to chase after those dastardly poison types that stole his special swagger. I apologize for my immediate type profiling. This special swagger is actually an important piece of rock to Piplup. The content of this rock will come up much later, but it is known as the Relic Fragment. The beach cave is basically the tutorial dungeon. It tells me all the things I need to know. You know, things like what money is, what items are, how to move, how to talk, how to jump, how to skip, how to commit tax fraud, all of it. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is called that because each dungeon is a mystery. They are randomized, meaning no 2 dungeons will look the same except by total accident or reloading saves. In each of the dungeons, there can be any number of enemies or items that spawn to fill the dungeon with great treasures and even greater dangers. This also means the exit can be found anywhere at all. But once we reach the bottom of Beach Cave, we find ourselves at the very first boss fight against Coughing and Zubat. Of course, because these two are the real bad guys, I have no issue dropping them to the sand. That doesn't sound as menacing as dropping them to the dirt. Regardless, they lose and we get Piplup's severe dopamine addiction back. Showcasing my bravery and recovering it for him, he asks if I can join up with the Wigglytuff Guild. So we begin chapter 2 with a little bit of a foot-based problem. In order to get in, I have to make parley with the foot fetishist below the grate. It sucks that I've never been here before because now he gets to stare at my feet trying to figure out who I am. Thankfully, the Diglett responsible for this madness has some psychic abilities. He can read my soul like a book, and I don't mean the wispy ghost type kind either. He lets us in and we are interrupted by the most racist bird known to man, Chatot. Did you know that when Chatot was introduced, the Pokemon was almost unanimously banned from all forms of competitive play because you could record unique lines through your DS microphone? People would use such a chance to scream slurs into their microphone, which would then be yelled out by the Pokemon when it was brought into battle. Chatot parades us around the facility to show off exactly what we'll be glaring at day in and day out once we join. We even get to meet the Guildmaster Wigglytuff. I am officially in this guild, but I am not granted the rank of master. This is outrageous. It's unfair. I do get a nice little box of stuff like a map, an explorer's badge, and a treasure bag. This poor treasure bag is going to be so barren. I also get to name my exploration team. Let's see. Pro Haters. Yeah, that fits. Entirely because Pro Women Haters doesn't. When we start the game, our treasure bag is capable of holding 16 items. It is a pity that we aren't even going to be holding half of that at any point in time. I digress, as we're shown to our rooms and allowed the chance to sleep off the excitement for the pain to come. Piplup does talk to me about how excited he is to start this journey right. First and foremost, by passing out before I can even get a word in on the conversation. I'm left to question my own existence instead. The next morning, we are so rudely awakened by God's loudest whisperer, and per usual, we are late to the first meeting ever. The morning address begins and ends with some words. It starts with some muffled words from a sleep-talking Wigglytuff and ends with a hip hip hooray chant. Chatot demands that we grab up some jobs from the bulletin board since we're lowly beginners to the guild. These are going to be important to our progression. For the first several chapters, the majority of my time spent in mystery dungeons is due to these jobs. Unfortunately, I can't choose the first job, but instead I am simply given one. I have to find Spoink's missing orb. This is a race against death, as canonically speaking, if Spoink does not have this orb set firmly upon its head, they will begin to grow tired and stop bouncing. If they stop bouncing, they die. This is a job that requires precision and care. It also just so happens that this job is filled with rock and water type Pokemon. That's wonderful for a fire type such as myself. Good thing none of them have annoying attacks yet, but I promise and swear to you that will not be the same attitude I have later on. Thankfully, due to the ridiculously low health every one of these enemies have, I'm able to find Spoink's magically psychic head ball and rock it away mostly unharmed. Every night before bed, we get to eat. For now. So we crunch munch, chew chew, snuffle slurp until our hearts can't take it. Then we have a heart attack shortly before passing out. Piplup does give me more words of adoration towards being a hero, but I'm not going to talk about what he says every night for the sake of virtual brevity. At the beginning of chapter 3, we are introduced to the Outlaw Job Bulletin Board, home to the wanted posters of the scariest Pokemon in the world. We aren't strong enough for that yet, so instead Bidoof shows us around town. Here in town, there are plenty of places to go and plenty of things to do. There's a bank, a move linking shop, a shop, and a storage facility. These are the 4 main structures, and the other ones aren't as important overall. Speaking to the Kecleon brothers, owner of the shop, we managed to meet 2 hippies named the, Azurill brothers? I don't actually know, but it's a Marill and an Azurill. And upon touching the younger in the most absolutely appropriate way possible, I promise YouTube, I get a vision. Well, not a vision, more like a delusion. There's a screaming sound in my head. You know what? That's probably me in the future yelling for help with how annoying the last few chapters will be. While making our way back to the guild, we run into Drowzee. He promises to help these 2 find their lost item. Oh, that's what they've been freaking out about, by the way, and why they're important to this story. I have to find a lost item of theirs. Upon touching Drowzee, we are forced into a Vietnam flash forward as we see Drowzee corner Azurill. Oh boy, that is definitely not safe for YouTube. Thankfully, Piplup is actually sane and doesn't listen to my delusions of the future. So we go back to the guild to check out the Outlaw Bulletin Board. Great Scott, would you look at that? Drowzee is one of the outlaws on the board. We've got to chase after him. So on to the first real dungeon. I zoink myself up bodybuilder style and we make our way through the mountainous caves. I do end up making a particular rule here. Items that come in a stack of more than 1 will count against the 5 items maximum. So anytime I pick up rocks or thorns in a stack of 2 to 5, I now have 2 to 5 additional items and I have to throw them all one by one until I have no more. That's all I really have to add for this dungeon, so what remains is just me running around and trying to find items I value more than the ones I forgot to put into storage. I should also note that this first dungeon, despite how important it is to save Azurill, is where I fucking die for the first time. Yes, instead of fainting, there are actually 2 things that can happen. The first is what happens most often, where I pass out and get teleported back to the guild for safety. However, sometimes I have the option to send out a rescue. Unfortunately, I can't play this game online as being rescued requires a friend in real life to play through the dungeon and save your Pokemon. Anyway, take note of the faint counter. I'll update it every time I faint, though I won't comment every time I do. Laugh at me when the number reaches higher than you expected it to. Our second boss fight comes in the form of Drowzee. Piplup is scared, but who could really be scared of this dude? Look at him, he's like a weird elephant who can't even see right with his squinty eyes. He hardly makes a scratch in our baby flesh before we save Azurill from his creepy grippers. Wait, no, that means feet, not hands. Then he's arrested and we can move on to the next day. We finally learn about the time gears, the main motivation piece for the story to continue onwards. Then we meet with a particularly hasty Grovyle training for the Olympics. He's collecting these time gears for some reason, and apparently once these time gears are disturbed, everything freezes in time at their original location. Though this is unbeknownst to us, what is beknownst to us is the fact that the job bulletin board is growing in size by the day. So I nab some jobs, but make the mistake of not activating them. So I just went into a dungeon with no actual purpose, and now I'm exploring it all the way to the depths. Well, another day, another nickel, right? This time I actually do take the jobs. My first mission is to rescue Starly, and my second is to deliver an Oranberry. Hint, I never delivered the Oranberry because I didn't realize I had to actually have one in my inventory before the mission. So all I can do is save Starly and get out of there. After many quests later, I begin chapter 4. Unfortunately, this chapter begins with helping a little shit named Diglett the Foot Connoisseur. He asked me to help identify the feet of the incoming Pokemon to the guild. Now you'd think this pretty easy for someone who stares at feet all day. Thankfully, I don't do such a thing, so you can hardly expect me to perfect this. Well, you see, it's not because I like looking at feet, it's just that they gave me easy options. I certainly won't get a perfect score the next 2 times they ask me to do this little mini game, right? With that embarrassing interaction over, that's all I have to do for the day. The next day continues with a few more quests. If you're wondering whether I break the rules when being given rewards for completing each quest, then I must disappoint you. The rewards are immediately sent to my storage rather than put into my inventory directly. Right at the start of chapter 5, I'm informed that I can now recruit random Pokemon in dungeons. That is, if those Pokemon Pokemon feel battered and bruised enough by my sheer righteous might granted only by Arceus. Chapter 5 also begins with a lecture on our forced servitude. It's time to do a brand spanking new journey fit for a full expert exploration team. So we have to scout ahead to a particular waterfall to see if it has a secret hidden around it. That is our job. Seems easy enough, right? Well, it certainly isn't the easiest, but it isn't the hardest either. The only way to actually get into this special dungeon is to leap through a waterfall. That's right, I get to feel the pain of each massive water droplet hitting my baby monkey flesh at approximately 3 to 4 feet per second. Good thing this is a child's game, or else it'd get a little nasty. Now with the waterfall jump over with, I can traverse this mystery dungeon. I do manage to get a little compatriot here in the form of a Wooper. Wooper is a very cute Pokemon. At the very end of this dungeon, I reach a neat little gem pocket. The gem pocket in question is filled with gems, as I'm sure you could have guessed. One gem in particular is movable, and with enough force, we cause the entire cavern to be flooded with water. There is one issue with this. We are in the cavern. So we get introduced to the Pokemon world's first slip and slide. Then, such a slip and slide sends us flying high into the air. Once we enter orbit again, we land in a nice little hot spring. It's oh so very relaxing, and the man in charge, Torkoal, is as cool as a cucumber. I guess, at the end of the day, what I had to find was that very gem cave. I'm not sure why it was relevant, and unless I'm just an idiot, I have no idea even after beating the game. Please tell me why it was relevant in the comments. Piplup tells me about how excited he is to be my partner, even showing me his relic fragment once again. Dude, I'm trying to sleep. Put that away. Disgusting. Apparently, he'll faint from happiness once we figure out what this thing does in the first place. On top of that, the genius himself figured out that my special premonition ability lets me see the future or the past. Before we can sleep for the night, the guildmaster informs us that Piplup and I are being considered for the big expedition. That's exciting, I guess. Well, the next morning at the early sunrise of Chapter 6, we get to meet Team Skull. It's made up of those two poison-type nincompoops that harassed Piplup earlier for his crystal meth rock. They brag about their leader, and wouldn't you know it, he shows up just to fart on the guild and ruin their day. Of course, nobody can blame a skunk for smelling bad, so it's not his fault his mother never gave him a bath growing up. I can't sit around all day and dwell on the unfortunate state of heroism in the 21st century though. What I can do is head over to Spinda's Cafe, newly opened, to enjoy myself a fresh brew of gummy slush. At Spinda's Cafe, I can trade food items in order to make cool slushies and frozen yogurts. I strictly use this place with colored gummies, which can increase my IQ based on whatever typing the gummy really is. Since Chimchar is a fire-type Pokemon, I get the largest IQ increases from the red gummies. The other side of the cafe is the recycle shop. Admittedly, I never once used this, but hey, I completely forgot about what it did until just now when I'm writing the script. I probably forgot again between writing the script and recording it too. For the next few days, I continue to accept quests left and right until my pockets are lined with not just 5 items, but also money and respect from my peers. Not that the respect really does anything remarkable, but hey, at least I have it. One special Mon ring, I'm once again subjected to the horrendous effects that foot-based geometric pattern matching brings upon an individual. If you're asking what that is, then it's torment, pain, torture, disgust. Thankfully, I mess up on 2 of my guesses in 1 round, so I'm free of being called a foot fetishist. Believe it or not, the Poison Crew are joining our little expedition. Before we can even go on it though, we actually have to be chosen. I mean, admittedly, I'm guaranteed to go on it anyway because this is a single-player adventure game and I am the single player. All that can be said from now on is that I go on more quests to prove myself. I am a purveyor of Starly companionship, by the way. Staraptor is my favorite normal-type Pokemon. Mentioning Staraptor brings something important to light though. My girlfriend informed me that I can't evolve any Pokemon until endgame, which, unfortunately, I will not be playing in endgame. That means I have to stay Baby Chimchar for the entire game. Now that's not too much of an issue, but I do hate not seeing my boy Infernape. The first route I have to take to prove myself as the bestest expedition candidate ever is the path to Apple Woods. I have to restock the Guildmaster's favorite food, perfect apples. I have a feeling this isn't going to go very well at all. That's actually a partial falsehood. It does go very well until I reach the tree holding all of the perfect apples. You see, those poison-type nerds beat us here and stole all of the perfect apples for themselves. It's very telling that in order to beat me, they have to fart me into unconsciousness though. Sadly, having failed the mission and completely ruined Wigglytuff's stock of perfect apples, we don't get to eat. Yeah, we're kind of forced to starve. Kind of harsh if you ask me. You can call me a troublesome something that goes to bed hungry because I go to bed hungry. Despite what a particular trio of poisonous nerds might tell you, I have friends in high places. Sunflora, Bidoof, and Chimecho. Sunflora, Bidoof, and Chimecho gave Piplup and I some food from last night's dinner. Now we're ready to kick ass and take names. It takes many more quests, many more smoothies, and 1 more podiatry exam before I can finally get anywhere with the story. It turns out Grovyle has found yet another time gear. Oh no. It's a good thing that the very next morning it's revealed that everyone is going on this expedition, not just select members. Who would have thought? The guild is then split up into groups, with my group consisting of Piplup, duh, myself, no way, and Bidoof. Acceptable. And wouldn't you know it, we evacuate the premises immediately. Thus begins Chapter 7. And here at the helm of Chapter 7, I make a mistake. The game lets me choose between Craggy Coast or Side Path. Can you tell which one is the proper way to go? And can you tell who is dumb enough to think this game has secret passages? Yep, Craggy Coast it is. Let's ignore the fact that I accidentally purposefully went down the side path. This mission features a brand new mechanic, by the way, multiple dungeon layers. Not only do I finish the first section of this dungeon, but I have to go down the next path, effectively doubling the length of the dungeon. Yeah, that won't be annoying by the end of things. After traversing both the craggiest of coasts and the horniest of mountains, we finally meet up with the rest of the gang during Chapter 8. This place seems familiar to my particular Chimchar. Our goal is to meet up with Uxie. Uxie? Our goal is to meet up with Uxie, the Pokemon guarding the Time Gear. We don't know there's a Time Gear here yet, but I'll metagame that knowledge for you. By the way, is Uxie a mythical or a legendary Pokemon? Piplup manages to find a neat little red crystal along the way, and whoa, that sure won't come in handy later, I bet. As it so happens, it did come in handy. After a little dizzy spell with my precognition ability, I know to slot the red gem into a statue of a spooky scary Pokemon named Groudon. Once we reach Chapter 9, Team Skull gets absolutely walloped by Wigglytuff, which is incredibly based of him to do. Team Skull is the least of my worries, however. I have to make it through Steam Cave to reach the most of my worries. After a short trip on a long jog, I find out that this so-called worry is actually a legendary Pokemon. Could it perhaps be the one Pokemon immortalized in the statue from earlier? Yes, it could, because it is. Another boss fight, another struggle. It's not that I struggled in the previous fights, but instead that I struggled a bit through previous dungeons, given this is the first time I've ever played this game. The issue that comes with this fight is not that this Groudon has ancient power, it's that Slash has a high critical hit rate, and this Groudon has Slash. It knocks out Piplup, and I'm sent back to my previous checkpoint. You see, that's what happens when you lose to bosses or certain necessary segments. You get sent back to the last checkpoint and have to go through the mystery dungeon leading up to the boss all over again. Thankfully, Groudon is no match for my hopelessly optimistic luck-based tactics on my second attempt. As it turns out, Uxie made a fake version of Groudon to scare people away, so we didn't actually beat Groudon, just a ghost-like mirage of him. It also turns out that Uxie, despite having the ability to erase memories, did not erase my memories. So much for that theory. Oh, and one more thing. Uxie is guarding a Time Gear in the center of a wonderful bit of scenery. What? We can't take that, so we promised to never reveal that this was here or that my Chimchar-ass self was close to having a heart attack when looking at it. We begin Chapter 10 by meeting a particularly unique set of footprints. I don't have to look at them, that's just what I'm told by Diglett and Loudred. It turns out it's Dusknoir. This ghost-type Pokemon is a legendary explorer across the land. He's heralded as the second coming of Arceus in this guild house. Turns out he's here to ask about our failure of a journey to Fogbound Lake. While he deliberates a terrorist attack against the guild, I do more jobs. The morning after Dusknoir arrived, we get a little something in the form of Team Skull being malicious once again. Instead of malicious actions, they instead choose to do some malicious plotting. I believe that's illegal under the Pokemon Federal Constitution. It turns out somebody poisoned the apple hole. We have to see if the Kecleon twinsies are going to stock perfect apples. They say no and also tell me to go fuck myself. Sorry, go frick myself. I managed to hear the juicy drama about the Azurill and Marill brothers. The item that led Azurill to get nearly murdered by Drowzee is supposedly on the beach. I can't find myself caring at the moment, I've got a one-track mind. The ones who do end up caring are those Team Skull Nimrods behind me. Chatot is upset to know there won't be any perfect apples in the local Walmart. I'm upset to know I might have to go on a journey to find some more in the future. Until then, I just go ahead and go do some side quests. For those of you who are wondering where I focus on the whole 5 items thing during missions, the night after my perilous journey to a place I've been to many times before, Chatot informs everyone another Time Gear has been stolen. That dastardly Grovyle is at it again, especially since I see it happen in real time. Maybe it's laggy time since it happened before we had dinner and I only see it after. The very next morning I'm conscripted by the water fairy babies to find their precious item. It's a water stone, rare in its nature. It's not actually on the beach like previously thought. Instead, it's in Amp Plains. If you can't tell by the name, that is an electric type zone, so Piplup is going to have a very rough time. Going through the plains ends with a run-in with a gang of Electrike and their Manectric leader. This is where things go awesome, for the other side. Shocker, right? A Taurus I had befriended along the way gets absolutely decimated, and then Piplup gets his shit rocked by a million different electric type moves, kind of like I already expected that. Well, you know what time it is. Getting back to the top. This time around I managed to nab an Electrike friend to join my quest. This is perfect because not only is Electrike a weird-ass Pokemon, and I love weird-ass Pokemon, but he also acts as a lightning rod thanks to his ability, Lightning Rod. I'm sure you could never have guessed that one. With an ability that makes electric type moves completely worthless against my team, Manectric stands no chance. It turns out somebody may have put this priceless item here to stir trouble for the Manectric gang, thus almost putting me out of business. I wonder who it could have been. Definitely not those dastardly poison types of Team Skull, right? Afterwards, I can talk to Dusknoir by the beach and reveal everything. I am a human, not a Pokemon. I can see things with my mind's eye, whether future or past. And I also have no memory of who I was before being a Pokemon. It turns out this ability I have is called the Dimensional Scream. It lets me see things when I touch things. What those things are is not important right now, but it will be in the future. All I know is we start chapter 11 with news that the time gear that was stolen was the one we were supposed to be quiet about. I'm sure you can see the kind of predicament that puts us in. It also appears that Grovyle is now an officially wanted outlaw to the guild. We must capture him without prejudice. It's a good thing that we aren't the police, or else that would go right out the window. I prepare myself by drinking some gin and tonic at Spinda's, and then Chatot informs everyone that we'll be searching for another time gear. This time gear is supposedly located in a brand spanking new area known as a desert. Seems a little dangerous for a fire type such as myself because of rock type moves, but sure, I'll brave the wilds. It is a good thing that there are also steel types here, or else I'd feel a little weak. The northern desert introduces the mechanic of passive abilities. Something like Sandstorm, which damages all non-ground rock or steel type Pokemon for 3 damage every few ticks. The thing is, I naturally regenerate about 5 health before the Sandstorm kicks up damage, so it doesn't matter unless we're in combat. Sadly, that doesn't stop me from eating dirt. Don't take this one literally, I'm using that as a metaphor for fainting a lot. This level is about where each dungeon starts to have a copious amount of floors to wade through. This will, of course, cause severe issues later in the challenge, but for now it's pretty manageable. Once we reach the Quicksand center of the Tootsie Pop, we've finished our mission. Strange that you say to watch out for the quicksand while walking closer to it, Piplup. Where do your allegiances truly lie? We seem to have found nothing at all, except that's a lie. We found quicksand. And what do you not do with quicksand? That's right, jump in it. Of course, the perfect place to hide a super secret ultra special time gear. So that's exactly what Piplup and I do the very next day. We leap into the quicksand faster than a frog leaping into a deep fryer in a Louisiana McDonald's. Now this next place. Let me tell you right now, this place is obnoxious. I have no issue with the Ninkadas, the Vibravas, the Pupitars. No, it's only the Arceus Forsaken Sandshrew that are the true problem here. These fuckers have such a high evasiveness naturally, it seems, that I can go entire rounds without hitting them once. Thankfully, I only mess up in this area once despite these issues. This isn't something more items could have helped with either, so it was just bashing my head into walls until something gave. At the end of this quicksand land is a special area known as the, Lake of the Time Gear. Here is where I have to fight Mesprit, who thinks we're going to steal the time gear. What an idiot, because they go down really fast. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. Once we beat the shit out of Mesprit, it turns out that Grovyle was waiting for this moment to pass. He manages to knock us out and steal the time gear, and then we have to run away before we, freeze in time and shit. Once chapter 12 begins, Dusknoir recommends we search for the last of the 3 lake spirits. First there was Uxie, then there was Mesprit, and now we have to find the time gear guarded by Azelf. Our destination is Crystal Cave, so I can use my extra cool Dimensional Scream ability to find out where it is. One thing I'm going to explain really fast is that certain moves work differently than their mainline game counterparts. For example, agility buffs the speed of every allied Pokemon in the same room as the one who used the move. This is why Skorupi is a very effective ally in these next few dungeons. He has the Acupressure move, which increases a random stat between attack, special attack, defense, and special defense to all allied Pokemon. Now that I've explained this to you, I will hardly use it for the future. Anyway, at the end of Crystal Cave, we see 3 crystals sticking out of the ground. I have to turn them to a lake water blue to find Crystal Crossing. This leads to Azelf's Lake and the Time Gear, the former of whom is currently being mogged by Grovyle. Before Ye Green-Fleshed Thief can steal the real TG, the entire underground lake gets overrun by massive crystals. But here we have to fight Grovyle. Immediately upon starting the fight, Electrike takes a big hit, but then Paris puts Grovyle to sleep. Then he stays asleep until we can beat the daylights out of him. Sadly, he still manages to pull through in the classic forced loss cutscene. Just as Piplup is about to get his bill ripped from his beak, Dusknoir steps in to stop Grovyle. According to chapter 13, Dusknoir has a secret. This secret is that he's from the future. He's here to chase after Grovyle, who is also from the future. Now is the time for him to step up his game and capture this Grovyle delinquent so they can go back to the future together. In the meantime, all I can do are some side jobs. This is a good time to introduce the concept of monster houses. These are randomly generated events in a single room in a dungeon that cause upwards of like 10 enemy Pokemon to appear. These Pokemon are always going to consist of the Pokemon found on the same floor as the monster house. The very first one I came across was one in Amp Plains, but I had Electrike, so all of those electric type moves did nothing to me at all. Once you beat a monster house, you gain the spoils of war. That is to say, whatever items were in the room are now yours. I continue to partake in what is known as fucking around and finding out as long as I can do so. It turns out that Grovyle has been successfully captured by Dusknoir, and they're preparing to head back into the future. Unfortunately, it seems I've got a one-way ticket to the future as well, first class and everything. Dusknoir grabs Piplup and myself and drags drags us in against our better will. And that begins chapter 14, where Piplup and I are now stranded in the wastelands of the future. You see, Dusknoir actually works for a being called Primal Dialga, a creature stranded in the frozen future where his time powers mean nothing but their most basic primal form. Now this is the really funny bit, and I'm sure you did not see this coming or think of this whatsoever. Dusknoir is the bad guy, and Groudon, the good guy. Surprise! Groudon was trying to save the future by stealing the time gears and putting them in Temporal Tower to rebuild it and keep it from collapsing. That's some story that isn't revealed right at this stage, but let's not beat around the bush here. Piplup, Groudon, and I end up escaping the idiot Sableye who are supposed to execute us. Of course, before too long, Piplup casts strong doubt on Groudon, so we have to go it alone for a while. These next few caves are where the real problems come along though. You see, I don't have any apples in my storage, since this is the first time I've ever played this game. I didn't see this coming. So unfortunately, as I traverse the chasm cave, I come pretty close to fainting because of hunger. I even end up eating a bunch of my healing items just to get a little tiny itsy bit more of belly filled so I don't have to restart everything here. It's really only the first section of this multi-dungeon future that causes me severe issues. So thankfully, soon enough I can meet back up with Groudon. Unfortunately, he's been cursed with a spirit tomb. This spirit tomb is angry for some reason. I guess they hate all non-ghost types like a weirdo. Now that I'm done with guessing, you better guess that this is a boss fight. And it's easy as pie too. I take 10 damage total from them, and fortunately they don't bring out any allies to fight me with. I honestly can't thank them enough for this either, because I was stressing out over this entire chapter with how close I was to actually fainting. Chapter 15 is where I get to the story that I mentioned earlier. Basically, total planet paralysis has happened because of this, which was a phenomenon Dusknoir mentioned earlier, but I didn't really see relevant to talk about until now, especially because he was blatantly lying about the planet's paralysis. Now we've got to go see Celebi, who is helping Groudon leap into the past to further the plot. It's a wondrous thing, there's just a pretty short dungeon beforehand, and then I can recruit Celebi to my team to reach the next important location. That important location is the Passage of Time. Sadly, we're ambushed by Dusknoir and the many Sableye that so desperately simp for him. We're also ambushed by Primal Dialga himself. Dusknoir had also revealed that Jack, aka me, is the partner to Groudon, a human who went back in time with him in order to save the world from the paralysis. It seems I got transformed into my base evolutionary form thanks to time travel. Thankfully, Celebi has enough power to quick start a teleportation to the past by moving us a few centimeters north. Chapter 16 opens with us now back in the past, Samurai Jack style. Samurai Jack got sent to the future, but you know what I mean. Nobody knows we're back, and nobody knows we're best buds with a supervillain. I'm tired of this prejudiced view on Groudon. Sure, Trico may not be my all-time favorite starter. In fact, he places pretty low in general, but he's still one of the starters. Have some respect. Anyway, we have to get through Tree Shroud Forest in order to reach the initial time gear that Groudon stole earlier. Our goal is to reach the Hidden Land to repower Temporal Tower, and yeah, our goal is the exact same as what Groudon was doing earlier in the game. We managed to nab the time gear with no problem whatsoever, and afterwards Groudon decides it best to go out on his own to nab the other time gears. There is some bad news though. Despite what we were told by Dusknoir, putting the time gears back did not stop the impending doom of the planet. Then before too long, Piplup has the bright idea to tell everybody what's going on. Actually, I had that idea, but it's kind of stupid, so I'll blame him. Once we hit chapter 17, we make our way over to the guild and reintroduce ourselves as the Pokemon who traveled through time. If you really think about it, we all travel through time regardless of our existence. This is where I mentioned the philosophical realization that time is but a fleeting matter, and perhaps, without reason, we shall perish as all things in the universe do. Who cares about that though? Everyone believes us when we tell them their superhero incarnate Dusknoir is the big bad villain, despite not having any real reason to think that way. Also, they believe us that Groudon is the good guy, despite, again, not having a reason to think so. Chatot recommends we seek out the village elder Torkoal residing in the hot springs. Remember that place from way before? Yep, we're gonna go relax there once again. It's just a short journey through Waterfall Cave, given the place is only dangerous to two things: toddlers and more toddlers. Torkoal tells me that he has no idea where the Hidden Land is. What a waste of time. All he managed to tell us was that we needed proof to find it. Nothing but facts over feelings, am I right, Torkoal Shapiro? Then the next morning, Torkoal arrives to tell us that this proof we need has a specific pattern. It probably took him all night to slowly walk his way over here. After telling us this, he even has the audacity to think we've been joking about this the entire time. This specific pattern ends up being Piplup's relic fragment. Thank goodness I don't have to go through a 30-floor dungeon just to find it. Before we can even get ready, Team Skull forces Torkoal to meander his way away so they can interrogate him about this so-called relic fragment. Goodness gracious, I can't believe the evil guys would do something so evil. Anyway, I prepared myself at Treasure Town and paid a visit to Idiot McSharkface Bluff to find Groudon left us a letter. Who cares what it says? I just want to save the world already. So on to chapter 18, where we reminisce about being bullied and see visions of dinosaurs in the distance. Before too long, we're traversing Brine Cave with Chatot. I sure hope he doesn't say any racial slurs. Brine cave is full of water and rock types, and even some water rock types. This turns Chimchar from a visitor into a victim. It's not the first section of this cave that gets me though. No, it's the second section after Chatot stops following us around like a sack of potatoes with half a brain cell. This part of the cave is occupied by the meanest and leanest of enemies that prey on an itty-bitty fire-type monkey man like myself. Thankfully, I have Focus Punch, so I can use this to my advantage to deal massive damage. After a couple more run-ins with death, we managed to find the knocked out poison-type nerds later down the line. I didn't tell you this because I wanted to surprise you, but Chatot warned us of a very dangerous set of Pokemon hiding deep within this cave. These Team Numbskulls ran into them and got their shit kicked in. We forgive them, though personally I wouldn't let this slide, and Skuntank accidentally drops the relic fragment. How loving of him. We're able to move on and try to find these so-called tough Pokemon as well as Chatot. As soon as we reach these dangerous enemies, they immediately ambush us and put Chatot out of commission. So it's up to Piplup and I to... Oh shit, Piplup got destroyed by a water-type move. Well, we can always... Oh, fuck, that's right. I have to go through all that shit again. Ah, well, it won't be that bad. At least it's not chapter 19 or 20 yet. The second try goes very well, and I'm surprised these water rock types don't wipe the floor with Chimchar overall. It was just Piplup that caused me an issue known as dying. Thankfully, after making sure Chatot isn't going to be a Thanksgiving turkey, we finally reached the strange sigil on the wall we were meant to reach. Piplup slips his relic fragment into place, and Lapras slowly glides his way towards our cave. Wow, you're taking forever, dude. Can you speed it up at all, please? We're finally at chapter 19, and it begins with some exposition. Basically, Wigglytuff knew of Lapras in the Hidden Land, but promised to stay quiet or he'd get hit by a drive-by from Dialga himself, or something like that. After some pretty crazy stories, we make it to the Hidden Land, and this is where things go really wrong. I die so many fucking times. This entire last section takes over an hour and a half worth of time to even complete before I can reach the final boss. Now, am I inflating that idea by adding in deaths in chapter 20? Yes, but chapter 20 takes place before the final boss as well, since the final boss is, well, final. With that being said, let's go over the events that take place while I struggle to breathe over the next hour and a half. Once we reach the Hidden Land, we have to traverse several locations. The Hidden Land, the Hidden Highlands, the Old Ruin, Temporal Tower, and Temporal Spiral. The Hidden Land and Highlands are incredibly difficult areas that you can't pin down with any one typing, so Focus Punch is my best bet here. Eventually it managed to work pretty consistently. Moving on to Hidden Highland, it's all the same shit, so Focus Punch is my best ally. Sorry Piplup. It's only once we get past that at the Old Ruins that we get any cool story details. Here we arrive at the Rainbow Stone Ship, which is how we'll get into Temporal Tower. However, we're ambushed by Dusknoir and his Sableye, rounded up and ready to get sent into the future. Once again, we say fuck it and take on the legendary, not legendary, Dusknoir. It does take 2 tries, but Dusknoir is absolutely demolished by my Focus Punch. It's odd, given fighting type moves don't hit ghost type Pokemon normally. Here they just do a little damage. The thing is, Focus Punch still does a lot of damage for doing a little bit of damage. Grovyle sacrifices himself to get Dusknoir into the future again. He also informs me that, believe it or not, once the past is changed, the future as I know it will no longer exist. I mean, it's still very sad and has extreme implications for the next 30 minutes of story content. And here at the start of the final chapter, Piplup and I now have to traverse Temporal Tower after using the Rainbow Stone Ship to reach its entrance. Nothing much to say outside of the deaths I experience and already covered. This place is a lot easier because there are a lot of steel, normal, and dark types that I can wall up with Focus Punch and Brick Break. Once we arrive at the top of the tower though, things get really heated. Keep in mind that an hour and a half of constant headaches and Pokemon form was done over a period of 2 days, and once I reach the top, I have to fight the final boss, Primal Dialga. Who knows how much harder he's going to be than the previous hour and a half worth of content. So, Piplup slides the time gears into place, and he appears. The fight begins. And I do it first try. Yep, all of that build-up just to decimate the final boss without even worrying about it. My girlfriend expected me to struggle a lot more in this area, and while I did my fair share of struggling, you better believe I bragged that I beat Dialga first try. After Dialga returns to his Empire state of mind, we can return to the guild for a job well done. But what's this? Oh no, I'm disappearing. A man from the future is becoming a man from the future no more. That is to say, I will have never existed. And so, after I disappear, Piplup must traverse his way back to the guild. He struggles, poor guy, and eventually he makes it back to tell the tales of our adventures. The sadness overwhelms him as he reminisces of meeting me on the beach. But there's a twist. After the credits roll, Dialga grants Piplup a wish for saving the world. He brings me back, flaming monkey tail and all, so that I can continue the adventure with Piplup. Despite being overjoyed with the return of a dear friend, that spells the end of my own personal adventures with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Despite the many grievances, the many deaths, and the many warm, loving, and oh-so-friendly talks at night with Piplup, I was still able to beat Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky with only 5 items in my inventory. Thank you for watching. Like I said before, this video is dedicated to my girlfriend who specially requested it a couple of months ago. I told her that I'd make the video for our anniversary if she were okay with that. She immediately said yes and was perfectly okay with the idea, even if it's kind of cheesy to dedicate a YouTube video to a loved one. My name was Jack, and it always has been. Remember, if you ever find yourself struck by loneliness and all you want is a friend to pick you up and show you the way, perhaps all you really have to do is stay lucky.